A veteran banker who has been with the country's largest bank for 4 decades will now be at the helm of one of the country's newest and fastest growing fintech startups, BharatPe. I'm talking about Mr. Rajnish Kumar, the former CMD of State Bank of India, who has now come on board as the chairman of BharatPe. He brings with him, of course, the massive experience that a State Bank of India allows to any banker, and comes at a time when BharatPe, along with Centrum, has got a license for a small finance bank, which they will be starting by the name of Unity Bank. Remember, this consortium of BharatPe and Centrum is also the highest bidder and will be taking over the beleaguered Punjab and Maharashtra Cooperative Bank. So, Mr. Rajnish Kumar surely has his work cut out for him and is speaking with us today on ET Now. Mr. Kumar, thank you so much for joining us and congratulations on your new gig, as they say in the startup world. Why are you excited about it and why did you think it would be a good fit?
Fintechs and the startups have always excited me. And even when I was chairman of the State Bank of India, my interactions would be fintechs and the startups and the support which we tried to give during my stint as chairman. So we forged many successful partnerships, and I believe that they are doing a very exciting job, and the work which they are doing, it is helping in reshaping the economy of India. And that's why this is a very exciting opportunity and an exciting work. And I'm hoping it will be different than what I was doing earlier.
Mr. Kumar, you are joining BharatPe at a time when the company itself is on the cusp of a lot of new beginnings. They have a buy now, pay later scheme that they are going to build, that vertical of that business that they're going to build up in a big way. Of course, as I mentioned, they have just got the small finance bank license along with Centrum. How do you map out the next few years for the company, and how do you think your experience will help in this new venture, especially with the small finance bank?
One is that the technology team and the team which is being led by their MD, HD, so they have a lot of energy and excitement. And because they are a startup, they are in financial technologies, many times what I found also is that they need some experienced people to guide them. And the help can be in many areas, and particularly in the area of governance and compliance. And there the experience which any banker could have after having put in say 30, 35 or 40 years of service, it can be very handy. The only issue of course is that the working style which a banker like me would be accustomed to, it would be very different than what they are accustomed. But matching that and at the same time, keeping the balance between the energy and the innovation which they do. And at the same time, there are many regulatory requirements, whether it is from the company's law perspective, if any company is going to be listed, then from SEBI regulations, then if you are a partner in a banking venture, then regulation by RBI. So many issues can come up and that is where a balance between innovation and as well as the requirements around the compliances and corporate governance. So once that is meshed, I think it can be a winning combination.
Is it a bit of a culture shock? I know it's been just a few days that you have been with BharatPe, but compared to State Bank of India, I mean, if you think of a staid PSU, and the epitome of a PSU, it is State Bank of India. You were there for 40 years and now you are with this relatively young team working with them. Is there a huge change in culture?
One is that it's a non-executive position, but over a period of time, I would know, but no shock, because even in IT department of the State Bank of India, we have been accustomed to working with the youngsters. Even the average age of employees in the State Bank of India has come down to now 45. And the youngsters who joined today's State Bank of India are very different than the people who joined in 80s or 90s. So that is a, I would say, a day-to-day experience, even with your own children. Their way of thinking, living is entirely different than what the way of living and thinking was in our time. So that is okay. That is a generational shift which keeps on taking place. But because SBI itself transitioned itself very well into the technology space and had partnership with many outside companies and vendors. So I would say that it is such a big shock or anything. And because I like their attitude, culture, and that's why I decided to take this route and accepted their invitation to be on their board and chair.
Okay. Let me get your views on this space. The fintech space and especially the payments space has become incredibly competitive in the last few years. There are a lot of players and not many of them, or I would say none of them, are making any money. How does this sit with you? A highly competitive space where profits is not the core end right now, and that is true of many startups, where it's more about growth, it's more about numbers rather than it is about profits. How do you feel about that?
So that is very true, and many companies which have come in the fintech space, and most of them in fact have been around the part of the payment system. But ultimately and eventually, I think their partnership where they can build the balance sheets and not necessarily in their own. So that is the emerging model and which is happening. And even in the case of BharatPe also, their lending is happening through their partners, and now they will have a partnership in the bank. So, for any company to make money apart from the fees or the revenue, which is not based on the balance sheet. So that itself may not be sufficient. That I don't want to name any of the companies, but that is the reality that many companies, even after several years of existence, have not been able to even break it. But this world is very different, the world of startups and not only of fintechs. The model is very different. It is all around the growth, put your foot in the door, and the growth is happening, and be part of that growth story. And that is very visible. Just look at the number of digital transactions which are happening. The infrastructure which has been created by UPI, unique. I don't think anywhere in the world we have an infrastructure like UPI. The number of transactions now in India, digital transactions are many more times than even China. So the world in which we live, it is changing. And then used data gets created. Then ability to capture that data and based on data analytics, capability to underwrite or introduce new conveniences for the consumer. That is what the USP of the fintechs is. And the problem with the existing legacy banks, whether in private or public sector, their systems were not designed for mobile banking. And mobile is something around which now an individual's life revolves. And that is where any company, whether in technology banking, who have a clean slate, they can think afresh and build their systems around this new reality. And that is where their competitive advantage would come. That is capability to think afresh and the agility. And all their business models will be built on these two factors.
Let me talk a bit about PMC. This has been a huge sore point, of course, for the Reserve Bank of India as well, ever since they stopped all of the depositors from withdrawing their money. 50,000 rupees is the cap. And a suitor was being looked for a while. Finally, it is Centrum and BharatPe who have come forward. They've now got the small finance bank license as well. What are the challenges here according to you, Mr. Kumar? And what is the kind of timeline that you see before depositors can get their money back and the bank can be up and running? Q4 of this year has been stated as a target. Do you think they're on track?
So I think Mr. Jaspal Bindra would be the right person to answer many of these questions. But yes, PMC depositors, PMC bank depositors, they have been waiting for long. And now RBI has kick-started at least that process by granting SFB license, which came yesterday as announced by Central. And then this was the first step, and I'm sure that the management led by Mr. Bindra, so they would take all the steps so that this bank becomes operational as soon as possible. And then the desire on the part of the regulators also to resolve the issues around primacy bank would be there. So I think there seems to be light at the tunnel. That's all I can say to present.
Okay, light at the end of the tunnel is important, but let's talk about what kind of challenges this new entity will also face. So, the founder or the co-founder of BharatPe, Mr. Rajnish, has been quoted as saying that one of the differentiating factors maybe will be offering higher deposit rates, and that was something that made PMC attractive as well, maybe even deposit rates above 6%. Do you think that that's a good strategy in general in this day and age to bring in more depositors?
I think, as I said, that the answers to these questions would be left to Jaspal Bindra and Rajnish to answer, because this is a nitty-gritty and the details of the strategy which the new banks board will deliberate and decide. So I don't think I am the right person now to answer the question around what would be the strategy of
fair enough. You are in a non-executive position, and I understand. But as a veteran banker, I just wanted your view that a new bank in the marketplace, how would they compete? And would this be an attractive way to bring in people with a higher deposit rate? Do you think it's feasible in this day and age and in this particular time?
As I said, that of course it would be for the board of the bank, new bank, to decide on this strategy. But when you are competing against legacy banks, it is not uncommon that the challengers or the new entrants, they end up paying slightly higher rate of interest on the deposit. We have seen it in the past, even in case of savings bank. You see many banks, private sector banks in particular, they are paying a very high rate as compared to the public sector banks or the established private sector banks. So that is a business strategy where ultimately you have to see and look what is the net interest margin you can get. So even if you pay a higher rate of interest to depositors, then obviously the bank will also need revenues for charging higher rate on the loans. And that is what I'm saying, that there cannot be one single element of a strategy. Everything has to be on tandem. But today, I think Kashmir also, and I read the statement given by Jaspal Bindra also, that the intent is to build a truly digital bank. And that would be a big differentiator according to me. Pricing of the product, that is a decision which in any bank, the asset liability committee, each bank has its asset liability committee, and they decide on what should be the interest rate on the products. And as far as the differentiation is concerned, India, currently we don't have a truly digital bank in that sense. Like a State Bank of India has you. It is, for all practical purposes, it is a digital bank. Bank of Baroda with their Bob for their type, HDFC, etc. But everything is sitting in the bank and a part of the bank. But if a bank can be built which is entirely on a digital platform and with branches acting as nodes, so you're reversing the whole process where in a legacy bank or a traditional bank, it is the branch which generates and originates and handles business, and digital is at the back end. But now digital can become the front end and the branches become the sort of a after sales service center. So there are many elements of the strategy. Obviously, everything cannot be discussed here, but true differentiator, according to me, whether it is a bank led by Centrum and BharatPe or any other new bank, the play would be all around the digital and the convenience which can be given to the consumer at their doorstep or on their mobile or on internet banking. And for a new bank, it is easier to do that. That I have already explained that what is the difficulty with the legacy banks.
Yes, yes, and you experienced that firsthand when YONO was being scaled up. Since I have the opportunity to speak to you, sir, I'd like your view on a broader subject of what the Indian banking system is undergoing right now. And let me contextualize this with the COVID-19 pandemic. There were a lot of fears after wave 1 and wave 2 that the NPA crisis that the Indian banking system has been suffering since some time now would be made worse. Do you think that those fears or the worst of those fears are behind us? Or would you argue that we don't have the full picture yet, because right now the system is still helping along those who've been badly hit? How would you describe the scenario right now?
So COVID-19 definitely, there are two things which distinguishes this between what happened 4 or 5 years ago. The problem with the banking system, NPAs, was all around the corporates. And these numbers were big, and many banks, they had NPAs as high as 25% in their corporate loan. COVID-19, the impact on the corporate loan book is not there or nowhere close to what we saw 4 or 5 years ago when asset quality deteriorated. So this is one big differential, and there are many reasons for that. And one of these being the consciously on the corporates, they deleveraged and their performance has not been as adversely impacted by COVID. A few sectors are there which are exceptions, like hospitality and aviation sector. And yes, the other sector which has been impacted the most in COVID is the SME sector. And there, of course, some regulatory forbearances have also been given by Reserve Bank of India, where restructuring has been allowed. And second is the government's scheme around with their guarantee, ECGLS. So these two have helped. The third factor has been the availability of ample liquidity. This ample liquidity support also has helped us in so far managing the crisis. But I believe that banks have the resilience and the capability to handle the NPS in SME sector. The bank's capability to handle a large percentage in the corporate loan book was not there. And that's why I would not say that the full impact of COVID-19 on the SME loan books has been visible because of the forbearance and the support given by the government. But because it will spread out over 2-3 years period, so banks will be able to manage, and all banks, their profits and capital position has been much, much better than what it was a few years ago. So these are the key differentiators, and hopefully with the recovery which we are seeing in the economy now, so that will also ease off the pressure of non-performing loans. But SME is one segment which we need to continuously watch, all the banks. And that segment always has been vulnerable, but that vulnerability has increased because of it.
You know, while we wrap up this interview, it's such an exciting time for you, Mr. Rajnish Kumar. There is a new venture which you are going to be on the board of and a part of, and you also have another new venture which is your first book release, The Custodian of Trust, which is going to be out on the 18th of October. Can we expect some juicy details of how it was like to be at the helm of the largest bank in India, the largest sector, public sector bank in India, and that fine tightrope walk that you must have had to do between the RBI and the Finance Ministry?
You can't expect a juicy book from a conservative bank. But definitely I have opened my heart, and the book has everything for everyone, in the sense that many things like Yes Bank, Jet Airways, the I would say the criticism which banks have faced around creation of NPAs, all that have been covered. Some of the experiment and experiences and the work done on cleaning up the balance sheet of SBI, and HR intervention. So that is another section. And in one section, I have also given some glimpses of my personal life before SBI and in SBI. To that extent, you can expect what somebody commented, that it is a plain reading. So if you are flying from Bombay to Delhi, you will be able to complete this book. So, and somebody said it's a racy book. So it will not disappoint in that sense. But if you are looking for some juices or controversies or something, it's not there.
So, looking forward in any case to your book and of course your new stint as a part of a buzzing startup after being part of the stately State Bank of India. Thank you so much, Rajnish Kumar, for joining us today.
Thank you, Tamanna. Thank you so much.